The old world was dead. There was no thunderous explosion, no mushroom clouds. It ended with a whisper, a spore. They called it the Crimson Bloom, a poetic name for something that turned 9/10 of humanity into screaming monsters, driven by a mad hunger. They were no longer human. They were echoes of desperation, empty shells with only the instinct to hunt. I am Kale, and for me, this world had never been clearer. When the Crimson Bloom swept across the planet, it killed most people. Others it changed. It turned them into shriekers, creatures left with only instinct and a hunger that could never be satisfied. As for me, it awakened something inside me, a different kind of sense. I was standing on the rooftop of a 30-story office building in the downtown area. The wind was cold. It carried the smell of decay and damp concrete. Below, the city was a deadly maze. Rusted cars lay scattered like metal tombstones. Weeds grew through the cracks in the asphalt, but I wasn't looking with my eyes. I closed my eyes, and I saw the world for me was no longer about color. It was about bioenergy streams. Normal survivors, the few that were left, they radiated a faint blue-white light, like a candle in the wind, fragile, easily extinguished. The shriekers, they were another story. They burned with a bright red, a red of blood and rage. Red energy tendrils connected them, forming a sick network that spread throughout the city. I could see every individual, every nest, every alpha. They called me a survivor. They were wrong. I am a predator. And this is my hunting ground. I opened my eyes, the metallic click of my weapon check, a tactical axe on my hip, a combat knife strapped to my calf, and a .50 caliber Desert Eagle in a chest holster. The gun was only a last resort. Noise was an invitation to death in this world. My target today was the Federal Reserve Building, a fortress of granite and steel. According to the survivors I rescued last week, its basement vault held a huge medical supply, antibiotics, morphine, surgical tools. They were gold in this new world. The problem was, it was also a nest. I looked. No, I sensed. At least 200 red lights flickered inside. Most of them were basic draggers, the grunts slow but numerous. But there were 3 exceptionally large lights, burning as bright as torches. Brutes, massive, tough, and extremely hard to kill. For anyone else, this was a suicide mission. For me, this was cleanup. I didn't use the main entrance. That was for fools. I rappelled down the back of the building using a rope. My feet landed in a narrow alley. The air here was thick with a foul stench. 2 shriekers were shambling near some trash cans. Their red lights were weak, fluctuating. They were hungry, weak. I drew the combat knife from its sheath on my calf. The carbon steel blade was black and sharp. I approached from behind. My footsteps made no sound. The first one. My hand clamped over its mouth, pulling its head back. The blade glided across its throat, sweetly. Not a sound. Just the crunch of cartilage and a gush of thick black fluid. Its red light winked out. The second one turned. Attracted by the movement, its eyes were milky white, vacant, its mouth open to shriek. Too late. I lunged forward. The tip of my knife plunged straight into its eye socket, through the thin bone, straight into the brain. I gave my wrist a slight twist. It collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. The second red light went out. 2 down, 198 to go. I entered the building through a basement window. It was pitch black inside. The stench was stronger, the smell of rotten meat and mold. I closed my eyes. The entire basement was a network of red lights. They were in a resting state, standing still or clustered together. I could see the safest path, a route through the sleeping crowd. I moved, slowly, carefully. The tactical axe in my hand was cold. Its weight was familiar, comforting. I passed through a large hall. Dozens of shriekers stood motionless like horrific statues. I could feel their hunger. It smoldered like hot coals. One wrong step, one careless noise, and this place would become a hell. But I don't make mistakes. I see the path. I reached the vault door, a massive circular steel door. It was slightly ajar. Probably the last people trying to get inside for shelter. A fatal mistake. Inside, the red light was brighter, denser, and the 3 torches of the brutes were there. They stood immense among the crowd, twice the size of the others. Their muscles were grotesquely twisted. Their skin was thick and leathery. I took a deep breath. This was it. I pushed the heavy door. The shriek of metal on metal echoed in the silent space, a piercing sound. A declaration of war. Instantly, every red light in my sight snapped towards me. 100 heads turned to me at once. Low growls began to rumble, quickly turning into a chorus of insane shrieks. They charged. A tsunami of flesh and bone, but I was prepared. As soon as they started to move, I tossed 2 flashbang grenades into the middle of the crowd. They flew in a perfect arc, landing exactly where I wanted them. Boom! Boom! The blinding white light and high-frequency sound made the shriekers stop. They staggered, disoriented. That was all the time I needed. I didn't retreat. I charged in. The axe in my hand sang a song of destruction. The blade came down. A head exploded like a watermelon. Black blood splattered. I spun. The axe swept horizontally, cutting 2 bodies in half at the waist. They collapsed. I was a whirlwind, a machine. Every movement was calculated. Every swing of the axe took a life. Head, neck, chest, chop, slash, stab. Red lights winked out one after another around me. Shrieks turned into gurgles and then silence. Then one of the brutes charged. It was nearly 3 meters tall. It swung its arm as thick as a pillar. The swing whistled through the air. I didn't meet it head on. I slid low, ducking under its arm. As I came up, I swung the axe into the back of its knee. Crack! The sound of bone breaking was crisp. The giant monster fell to one knee. It roared in pain and anger. It turned to grab me. But I didn't give it a second chance. I jumped onto its back, used it as a stepping stone, then launched myself high. In midair, I swung the axe with both hands. The blade sank deep into its nape, right where the skull met the spine. The giant monster crashed to the ground, forever silent. Its bright red light faded like a doused flame. The other 2 roared. Their rage made the smaller shriekers scatter. They charged at the same time from 2 sides. A simple pincer tactic, but effective. Time to use the big toy. I dropped the axe. My right hand drew the Desert Eagle from its holster. The cold feel of the metal was solid. Boom! The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, loud and powerful. The .50 caliber round slammed into the chest of the brute on the left. It didn't just penetrate. It created a hole the size of a grapefruit, blowing its heart and lungs out its back. It was thrown back several meters before it collapsed. Boom! I turned. The second shot hit the one on the right in the head. Its skull exploded like a ripe melon smashed against a wall. Bone fragments and brain matter splattered everywhere. The silence that followed was sudden and frightening. The remaining shriekers, the grunts, they stopped. The death of their alphas seemed to have broken their connection. They began to mill about aimlessly. This was my chance. I picked up my axe and began the cleanup. This time, there was no resistance, only slaughter. 10 minutes later, it was over. All the red lights in the vault were out. I stood in the middle of the carnage. My breathing was heavy, adrenaline was pumping through my veins. But it was a cold, controlled adrenaline. I had won. I walked past the bodies, into the medical storage, dozens of steel shelves filled with boxes of medicine bottles, a treasure trove, enough to save hundreds of people. I don't do this out of altruism. I'm not a hero. I'm a pragmatist. The more survivors there are, the more chance this world has to be rebuilt. The more blue-white lights there are, the more the red darkness is pushed back. It's that simple. I do this to create a world where I can close my eyes and see only peace. I found a few large backpacks in a security room. I started packing, taking only the most important things: broad-spectrum antibiotics, strong painkillers, bandages and suture kits. The job wasn't finished. Tonight, this area was safe. Tomorrow, I would go further, because in this new world, you don't just survive, you dominate it. I left the bank building as dawn began to break. The sky was a bleak, dreary gray. The air was colder and cleaner after a night of slaughter. I wore 2 heavy backpacks, one on my chest, one on my back. Their weight was the weight of hope, not for me, but for others. I walked through the silent streets. I could feel the emptiness. The red lights were gone from this area, at least for a few blocks. The sound of the Desert Eagle had done its job. It both killed and deterred. I had no specific destination. I just walked, searching for blue-white flickers of light, searching for survivors. On the way, I stopped at an old convenience store. The glass door was shattered. The goods had been looted long ago, but I wasn't looking for food. I was looking for information. A tattered old city map lay on the floor. I picked it up, dusted it off. It was still usable. I marked the location of the bank building, then began to plot a course. I needed a safer place to store these medical supplies, a place that could be defended. My eyes stopped on a location on the map, Mercy West Hospital. It was on the edge of the city, near a river, a good location, multiple escape routes, and most importantly, a hospital might have more resources. I folded the map, put it in my pocket. That was my new goal. The journey to Mercy West took almost a full day on foot. I moved carefully, always staying in the shadows of buildings, avoiding open areas. My senses constantly scanned the surroundings. Occasionally I sensed a few lone red lights, stray shriekers. I dealt with them quickly and silently. My knife never missed. As I got closer to the hospital area, I felt something different. The energy here was denser, not just the red of the shriekers, but also a cluster of blue-white light. About 20 people. They were in the hospital. They were holding out. I felt a faint glimmer of hope, but then I sensed something else. A siege. Hundreds of red lights were surrounding the hospital. They weren't attacking, just standing there, waiting, like a pack of wolves surrounding an injured prey. I hid behind an overturned bus, observing the situation. This was not a normal horde. They were organized, and I soon realized why. In the center of the siege, there was a different red light. It didn't burn hot like a brute's. It was bright but cold, and it emitted rhythmic energy waves. A siren. I had never faced a siren before. I'd only heard stories about them. They weren't physically strong, but they could emit a type of subsonic sound, a call that shriekers couldn't resist. It could assemble an army. This siren was keeping the horde focused, waiting for the people inside to make a mistake or starve to death. I had to act. If I simply walked away, those people would surely die, and my medical supplies wouldn't save anyone. The plan was simple, but dangerous. I had to kill the siren. When it died, the horde would lose its command. They would become chaotic and would likely disperse. The problem was the siren was protected by hundreds of guards. I couldn't fight my way through. I needed a diversion. I looked around. My eyes fell on a gas station about 200 meters away. Its fuel tanks were probably still there. An idea sparked in my mind. I started moving silently as a ghost. I made a wide arc, staying clear of the siege line. I approached the gas station from the rear. Luckily, it was empty. No shriekers nearby. I found the cap to the underground tank. It was stuck. I used my axe to pry it open. The strong smell of gasoline hit my nose. Good. We have nothing. I'm not here to take anything, I said. My voice was low and even. The siege is broken. The siren is dead. Another long pause. I could feel their suspicion and fear. Their blue-white lights flickered intensely. How do we know we can trust you? Another voice, a woman's, asked. You don't have to trust me, I replied. But the remaining shriekers will be back soon, or worse things will be drawn by the smell of blood. You can't stay here forever. I heard muffled whispers from inside. Finally, there was a clatter as they began to move the barricade. The door slowly opened. A man holding a baseball bat stood in the doorway. He was thin and dirty, but his eyes were full of determination. Behind him were about 20 other people, women, children, the elderly, all gaunt and terrified. The woman who had spoken earlier stepped forward. She looked to be in her 30s. Her hair was tied back hastily. She wore a dirty nurse's uniform, but her posture was straight. I'm Alara, she said. Thank you. You saved us. I'm Kale, I replied. I need to come inside. I have medicine. Alara's eyes lit up when she heard the word medicine. She nodded and stepped back, letting me in. The main lobby of the hospital was a mess. Dried blood and debris were everywhere. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the smell of sickness and fear. I set my 2 backpacks on the floor. The small sound made a few people jump. Here, I said, opening the top backpack. Antibiotics, painkillers, bandages. Alara knelt down. Her hands trembled as she picked up a box of penicillin. She looked at it as if it were a miracle. We have many wounded, she said, her voice breaking. Infections. We had nothing left to fight them. You do now, I said. I looked at the group. They were weak, but they had survived. That meant something. Among the group was an older man. He had a gray beard and bright eyes. He was looking at my gun with the curiosity of an engineer. That's a Desert Eagle, he said. His voice was low and steady. 50 cal. A powerful weapon, but loud. It serves its purpose, I replied. I'm Ben, he said, extending a calloused hand. I was the chief engineer at the city power plant. I shook his hand. It was a firm grip. Kale. For the next few hours, Ilara and a few others began to treat the wounded. The presence of a medicine brought a new life to the group. They were no longer desperate. Ben and I sat in an old office. He had spread my map out on a desk. That explosion was spectacular, Ben said. A bold idea, but effective. It got the job done, I said. But it was also a signal, Ben pointed out. It tells everything within 10 miles that something is happening here. We can't stay in this hospital. I nodded. I know. I'm looking for a place to set up a permanent base. Ben looked at the map. His finger moved across the paper. Most of the good places in the city are death traps. Too many shriekers. Too many corners. I don't mind cleaning, I said. That's not the point, Ben said. The point is long-term. Clean water, power, defensibility. You can't fight forever. He was right. Ben pointed to an area north of the city, an abandoned industrial park. Here, he said, the Haven, a survivor camp, the biggest one in this area. They have walls, organization, run by a man named Marcus. Marcus? I asked. He used to be a corporate security director, Ben explained. A tough man, disciplined. He's gathered about 200 people. They have small-scale farming, a water filtration system. It sounded too good to be true. Why aren't you there? I asked. Ben sighed. Marcus and I had our disagreements. He runs Haven like a dictator. Everything is his. Everyone must follow his orders without question. I didn't like how he treated people. I felt a bit wary. A smug dictator was often a fool, and stupidity would get you killed faster than any monster. But it's the safest place we know, Ilara interjected. She had entered the room at some point. With these people, with the children, we need a place like Haven, at least for a while. She had a point. This group was too weak to travel far on their own. All right, I decided. We'll go to Haven, but we go my way, cautiously and ready for anything. 3 days later, we set out. A caravan of 23 people. I led the way. Ben and a few other able-bodied men brought up the rear. Ilara and the women took care of the children and the elderly in the middle. The journey was slow and tense. Every strange noise made people jump, but my senses helped us avoid most dangers. I could feel the shrieker nests from a distance. We went around them. After 2 days of moving, we saw Haven. It was a massive warehouse surrounded by a wall made of old shipping containers and trucks. There were watchtowers with men holding rifles. From a distance, it looked solid. As we approached the main gate, a group of guards stopped us. Their leader was a large man with a scarred face. He looked us up and down. His gaze lingered on my axe and my gun. "What do you want?" he growled. "We're here to ask for shelter," Ilara said. "We have wounded. We have children." The scarred man sneered. "Haven isn't a charity. Everyone has to contribute. What do you have?" "We have a nurse," I said, pointing to Ilara. "An engineer," I pointed to Ben. "And me," I continued. "I can fight." The scarred man laughed. "A wanderer with an axe. Haven has plenty of fighters." "Let them in, Kurt," a voice called from the wall. A man stepped out. He wore a clean tactical suit. He was tall and well-built. His face was handsome in a cold way. This must be Marcus. He looked down at us. His eyes were sharp and calculating, especially the old engineer. "We can always use skilled people." Marcus gave a signal. The gate was opened. "Welcome to Haven," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But understand this, there are rules here and I am the law." Inside Haven was another world. It was organized, much cleaner than the world outside. People were working, some were tending small gardens, others were repairing tools. There was a sense of order, but there was also a sense of tension. People moved with purpose, but there were no smiles, no cheerful chatter. Their blue-white lights were stable, but faint, like lamps turned to their lowest setting. Marcus led us through the camp. He talked non-stop, bragging about his defense system, about the discipline of his people, about how he had built all of this from nothing. He was clearly very proud of himself. "Ben," Marcus said, clapping the old engineer on the shoulder, "it's good to have you back. Our generator is acting up again. I need you to take a look at it." Ben just nodded. He didn't look happy. "Ilara," Marcus continued, turning to the nurse, "our infirmary can always use another pair of hands. You'll work under Dr. Finch's supervision." Ilara nodded thankfully. Then Marcus turned to me. He looked me over, from my dusty boots to the gun on my chest. "And you, Kale," he said. "A fighter. Good. But in Haven, we don't allow personal weapons. All weapons must be turned over to the common armory, for the safety of the community." I looked him straight in the eye. "No," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through Marcus's speech. Silence fell. Marcus's guards gripped their weapons. "What did you say?" Marcus asked. His voice turned cold. I said no, I repeated. "My weapons stay with me." "That's the rule here," Marcus insisted. "If you want to stay, you follow the rules." "Then maybe I won't stay," I said casually. "But the group that came with me will. They need this place." My confidence seemed to confuse Marcus. He was used to people bowing to him. He didn't know what to do with someone who didn't. He glanced at Ben and Ilara. He knew they were valuable assets. He didn't want to lose them. "All right," Marcus finally said, trying to sound generous. "An exception. Since you escorted valuable people here, you can keep your weapons. But if there's any trouble, I won't hesitate." "There won't be any trouble from me," I said. Marcus assigned us an area in a corner of the warehouse to rest. It was just an empty space on the concrete floor, but it was dry and safe. For the next few days, I observed Haven. Ben was right. Marcus was a dictator. He controlled everything. The food, the water, the weapons. The people worked hard, but they lived in fear. Fear of Marcus and his loyal soldiers. I spent most of my time on the high catwalks of the warehouse. From there I could observe the entire camp, and more importantly, I could sense the world outside. My senses gave me an advantage that Marcus couldn't understand. I could feel the Shrieker hordes moving in the distance, feel the changes in the red energy network, and I felt something coming, a massive buildup of energy to the east, bigger than anything I had ever sensed before. A massive horde, and it was moving towards us. I went to find Ben. He was working on the generator. His hands were covered in grease. "We have a problem," I said. "A big horde is coming, very big." Ben stopped working, wiped the sweat from his forehead. "How big?" "Thousands," I said, "and I sense at least 5, maybe 6, brute-sized lights." Ben swore. "Marcus's wall won't hold. Those containers will be tossed like toys." "I know," I said. "We need to tell him." We found Marcus in his office. A makeshift room, but it had a large desk and a leather chair. He was reviewing food inventory reports. "Marcus," I said, "a massive horde is coming from the east. They'll be here in less than a day." Marcus looked up, annoyed. "How do you know?" "I just know," I said simply. "You're just a wanderer," Marcus scoffed. "What do you think you know about horde movements? My patrols haven't reported anything." "Your patrols will only see them when it's too late," I said. "Your wall won't hold. The brutes will tear it apart. My wall has stood for the last 2 years, Marcus said smugly. "It will stand. Now get out, I'm busy." I looked at Ben. Ben shook his head subtly. It was no use arguing with a fool. "Fine," I said. "It's your funeral." I turned and left. I don't waste my time on people who won't listen. I needed to prepare. I returned to my corner, took out the things I had collected on my way, a few rolls of barbed wire, homemade mines I had made from tin cans and gunpowder. I couldn't save all of Haven, but I could protect my little corner. Ilara came to me. Her face was worried. "Ben told me, is it true?" "It's true," I confirmed. "Then we have to do something, warn people." "I tried," I said. But it didn't stop them. They kept pouring in. I stood at the edge of the defensive perimeter, and I began to fight. My axe rose and fell. Each swing took a life. Black blood splattered. I was an island of destruction in a sea of chaos. But there were too many. Even I couldn't kill them all. Then 2 brutes noticed me. They roared and broke from the crowd, heading straight for me. All the pressure was now on me. The 2 giant monsters charged. The ground shook under their footsteps. The smaller shriekers parted to make way. They were like 2 runaway locomotives. I stood my ground. My breathing was steady. I had faced 3 at once before. 2 was not a problem. The problem was the crowd around them. I couldn't just focus on them. The one on the left threw a massive hook punch. I didn't back down. I charged forward, ducking inside its reach. My axe swung up in a diagonal arc, slashing into its unprotected armpit, a deep gash. Thick black blood poured out. It roared in pain, but the one on the right was already there. It used its body to ram me. I couldn't dodge in time. The impact was like being hit by a truck. I was thrown backward. I crashed into a pile of metal barrels. Pain shot through my back and shoulder, but nothing was broken. I sprang to my feet immediately. The injured brute was clutching its arm. The other one was charging to finish me off. I drew my Desert Eagle. No more time for silence. Boom, boom. 2 quick shots. The first one hit the knee of the charging one. It buckled. The second one hit the center of the chest of the one with the injured arm. The force of the bullet made it stagger back. I used that moment. I rushed the one on its knees, jumped onto its thigh, then onto its shoulder. It tried to grab me, but I was faster. I stood on its shoulder. My axe held high, then brought it down on the top of its head. The blade sank deep into its skull. The monster collapsed. Its red light winked out, 1 down, 5 more in the camp. The remaining brute had managed to stand up. It looked at the corpse of its comrade, then at me. A hateful roar came from its throat. It ignored the wound in its chest and charged. But now I had room to move. I didn't meet it head on. I moved around it, always staying behind or to its side. It turned clumsily, too big, too slow. I constantly attacked its legs and back. Quick, shallow cuts, not lethal, but making it bleed and lose strength, like a wolf harassing a bear. Finally, it was exhausted, it was panting, it stood still. That's when I made the finishing blow. I threw my axe. The blade spun in the air, it buried itself straight into its eye socket. The monster fell backward, its fall shook the ground. Silence. 2 brutes were dead. The surrounding shriekers seemed to pause for a moment. They were disoriented. I used that chance. I signaled to Ben. Now! Ben and a few other men were ready. They pushed a large forklift. On it were several fuel drums. They had punctured them as I instructed. Fuel poured onto the floor, creating a large pool between us and the rest of the horde. I threw a flare into the pool of fuel. A wall of fire erupted violently, 10 meters high. It split the warehouse in 2. The shriekers were blocked by the flames. They roared helplessly. We had a precious moment of respite, but I knew it wouldn't last. The other 4 brutes were still rampaging in other parts of Haven, and the fire would eventually die down. "We have to get out of here," Elara said. Her breath was short. "Go where?" Ben asked. "This place is a death trap." "Outside," I said. "Outside is safer than in here." I looked towards the western wall. It was still intact. "We'll make an exit there. Ben, can you start one of those trucks?" I pointed to a heavy-duty truck nearby. "Maybe," Ben said, "but it'll make a lot of noise." "We need that noise," I said, "to get their attention." The plan was reckless, but it was our only chance. Ben and 2 other men ran towards the truck. Elara gathered the rest of the people, mostly women and children, about 15 of them. I stood guard, staring at the wall of fire. The flames were starting to weaken. I could see the silhouettes of the shriekers through the fire. They were waiting. I heard the truck's engine cough a few times, then it roared to life. The rumble of the diesel engine echoed throughout the warehouse. Immediately, the remaining 4 brutes turned towards the sound. They began to move towards us. "Kale," Ben shouted from the cab, "let's go." "All right," I ordered the group. "Get in the back of the truck, quickly." Everyone started climbing into the truck bed. I and a few other strong men helped them. "Drive," I yelled at Ben when the last person was safely on board. "Drive straight into the western wall." Ben nodded. He floored the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward. I stood in the back of the truck bed, axe in my hand, my gun reloaded. The truck slammed into the container wall. A loud crash of metal on metal. The container was pushed back, creating an opening. The truck burst out into the open space. We were out, but only for a moment. The 4 brutes and hundreds of other shriekers were chasing us. They poured out of the breach in the wall. "Don't stop," I yelled. "Just drive." Ben drove the truck towards the nearby hills. The rough terrain made the truck shake violently. I had to hold on tight not to fall. I looked back at the pursuing crowd. They were too close. I started shooting, 1 shot at a time, aiming for the brutes. Boom, one was hit in the shoulder. It staggered, but didn't fall. Boom, another was hit in the leg. It fell down, taking dozens of other shriekers with it. But the other 2 continued to chase. They were terrifyingly fast. They were closing the distance. One of them threw a large piece of concrete. It flew past the truck bed, almost hitting a child. The situation was getting worse. I looked around, searching for an advantage. I saw it. Ahead was an old bridge crossing a deep ravine. The bridge didn't look sturdy. "Ben," I shouted, "drive across that bridge as fast as you can." Ben looked at the bridge, then at me. He understood my idea. He pushed the accelerator to the floor. The truck sped onto the bridge. The wooden planks creaked under its weight, but it held. We made it to the other side. "Stop," I ordered. Ben slammed on the brakes. I jumped off. With my last few mines, I ran back onto the bridge, placed the mines at key support points. The two brutes and the horde had reached the other end of the bridge. They didn't hesitate. They charged onto the bridge. I ran back, towards the truck. "Go!" I shouted. I drew my gun, aimed at one of the mines. Boom! The bullet hit its target. A chain reaction occurred. The mines exploded at the same time. The bridge's support pillars were blown away. The bridge collapsed. The two brutes and hundreds of shriekers fell into the deep chasm. Their roars disappeared in the sound of the collapse. Silence. We had done it. We had survived. I turned to look at the people on the truck. They looked at me with a mixture of terror and awe. Haven had fallen, but a small group had escaped. Now they were my people, my responsibility. I climbed back onto the truck. "Let's go," I said to Ben. "Find a safe place to rest. We need to regroup." We drove for hours, deep into the desolate countryside, away from the city and its chaos. Eventually, Ben found an old, abandoned farm. It sat on a hill, with a commanding view of the surroundings. A good defensive position. We stopped. Exhaustion washed over everyone, but no one rested. There was too much to do. I assigned tasks. Ben and the other men checked the house and the barn, looking for anything useful and fortifying the entrances. Alara and the women tended to the wounded and prepared food from the little we had salvaged from Haven. I patrolled the perimeter. My senses scanned a wide circle. The area was relatively clean. Only a few lone shriekers. I dealt with them quickly. That night, we gathered around a small fire in the farm's courtyard. No one said much. The shock of Haven's fall was still too great. They had lost their homes, their friends, the false sense of security that Marcus had created. Alara came and sat next to me. "Thank you, Cale," she said softly. "You saved us again." "I did what needed to be done," I replied. "Do you have a plan?" she asked. "Always," I said. I looked into the fire. Its light danced on the faces of the survivors. They were looking at me, waiting for guidance, waiting for hope. "First," I said, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "we survive. We will fortify this place, turn it into a temporary fortress. We will hunt. We will scavenge for supplies." "And then?" Ben asked. "Then," I said, "we stop running. We stop building walls and waiting to die. We will hunt. We will take back this land inch by inch. Haven failed because it was defensive. We will succeed because we will attack." My words seemed to ignite a spark in their eyes. It gave them a goal, a purpose. In the following weeks, the farm changed. Under Ben's guidance, we built strong fences, set traps, created an effective defense system. I trained the able-bodied men, taught them how to fight, how to move silently, how to use their weapons effectively. They were not natural warriors, but they learned fast. Fear is an excellent teacher. I often went hunting alone, bringing back food and supplies. During these trips, I began to discover something disturbing. The shriekers were changing. They were becoming smarter, more organized, even without a siren. It was as if some collective intelligence was developing. One day, while tracking a herd of deer, I found something, a shrieker, but it was different. It wasn't wandering aimlessly. It was observing, hiding in the bushes, watching the deer herd. Like a hunter, its red light was also different. It was steadier, more focused. I called it a stalker. I decided not to kill it. I watched it from a safe distance. The stalker watched the deer for hours. It was patient. It waited for the perfect opportunity. When a young deer strayed from the herd, it attacked. As fast as lightning. It didn't roar. It moved in silence. It killed the deer with a bite to the neck. Then it dragged the carcass into the bushes. This was a dangerous evolution. A shrieker that could hunt, that could plan. I returned to the farm, told Ben and Alara what I had seen. "They're adapting," Ben said, his face grim. "This changes everything." "It means we're not the only predators anymore," I said. That night I was on watch in the lookout post, staring out into the darkness. Suddenly my senses flared. A group of red lights was approaching. Fast and silent, they were not a chaotic horde. They moved in formation. Like a Spec Ops team, I blew a warning whistle. Instantly, the farm came to life. Everyone got into combat positions. They were here, the stalkers, about 20 of them. They moved fast and low, hard to see in the dark. They didn't attack the fences, they looked for weak points. One of them leapt onto the roof of the barn, then jumped down into the courtyard. It moved with incredible speed. Before anyone could react, it attacked one of the guards, killing him with a single bite. Chaos broke out. More stalkers got inside. They attacked from all directions, causing panic. I jumped down from the lookout post, rushed into the middle of the fight. My axe was a blur. I killed a stalker that was attacking Alara, then spun and beheaded another, but they were too fast, too unpredictable. They didn't fight like regular shriekers, they coordinated with each other. One would draw my attention, while another attacked from the side. I got a deep scratch on my arm, the pain burned. I realized that fighting them head-on was a mistake. I needed to change my tactics. I backed away. Focused on my senses, I closed my eyes, ignored the chaos around me. I focused only on the red lights. I could see their movements, see their intentions. One was charging at me from the right. I didn't open my eyes. I just swung my axe on instinct. My blade met it, cutting deep into its shoulder. It roared in pain. Another one jumped from above. I rolled to the side, dodging it by a hair's breadth. In that moment of intense concentration, something shifted inside me. The energy I was sensing. I could not just see it anymore. I could feel it, touch it. A stalker charged straight at me, its mouth wide open. This time I didn't dodge. I held out my hand, focused all my will. An invisible pulse of force erupted from my palm. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to make the stalker stop, to lose its balance. It fell in front of me. I opened my eyes, looked at the monster convulsing on the ground. Then I finished it. What had I just done? A new ability, a new weapon. I had no time to analyze. The fight was still going on. I started to use my new ability. I couldn't create powerful pulses, but I could create small pushes, enough to unbalance an enemy, enough to create an opening. I pushed a stalker into a spike trap. I made another one stumble so Ben could shoot it. I became the center of the defense, controlling the flow of the battle, slowly. We began to regain the upper hand. The number of stalkers dwindled. Finally, the surviving ones realized they couldn't win. They retreated, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as they had come. The battle was over. The farm was quiet. Only the sound of heavy breathing and the moans of the wounded remained. We had won. But the cost was 3 dead, 5 wounded. "They'll be back," Ben said, "and they'll bring more next time." "I know," I said, looking at my hand, "but next time I'll be stronger too." After the battle, a heavy silence fell over the farm. We had lost 3 people. 3 blue-white lights had been extinguished forever. The next morning, we buried them on a hillside overlooking the valley. There was no long ceremony, just grim faces and silent prayers. This world had no time for prolonged grief. Pain was a luxury. Alara tended to the wounded. The stalker's claws were venomous. They caused a high fever and rapid infection. If not for the antibiotics I had taken from the bank, those 5 wounded people would have also died. Everyone worked mechanically, repairing the fence, clearing the debris. Fear had been replaced by a cold determination. They had faced a new enemy, and they had survived. That had changed them. I separated myself from the group. I went to an abandoned barn far from the farm. I needed to understand what had happened to me, this new ability. I stood in the middle of the empty barn, closed my eyes, tried to recreate that feeling, the feeling of connecting with the energy around me. At first it was like trying to grasp smoke. I could see it, feel its presence, but I couldn't touch it. I focused, pushed away all thoughts. There was only my will and the invisible sea of energy. I held out my hand, tried to push. Nothing happened. I tried again. This time I didn't try to create a force. I tried to stir the energy, like stirring a stick in water, a very slight sensation, a ripple. I opened my eyes. An empty can on the floor had rolled a little. I had done it. I spent the whole day in the barn practicing over and over. From moving an empty can, I moved on to pushing an old tire, then an empty barrel. It drained my energy. Every time I used this ability, it gave me a sharp headache and left my body tired. But I could feel myself getting stronger. My control was becoming more refined. By the end of the day, I could create a pulse strong enough to make a wooden plank vibrate from 5 meters away. It was still weak, but it was a weapon no one could see. When I returned to the farm at dusk, Ben was waiting for me. He looked at me, his eyes full of questions. "I saw what you did during the fight," Ben said. "It wasn't normal." "This world isn't normal anymore," I replied. "That's right," he agreed. "The Crimson Bloom spore. It changed everything. It turned some into monsters. It killed others, and it seems it unlocked something in a few, like you." "You think this is caused by the spore?" I asked. "I don't think," Ben said. "I'm sure. It's like a forced evolutionary catalyst. It gave you a new sense to perceive bioenergy, and now it seems your nervous system has learned to act back on that energy, a form of bioresonance." His theory sounded plausible. "Can it get stronger?" "Anything can get stronger with training," Ben said. "Muscles, the mind, and perhaps this ability too, but Kale, we can't stay here." "I know. Those stalkers are smart. They scouted us. They tested our defenses. The next time they come back, they'll have a better plan, and there will be more of them. We have to go." "Go where?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. We were running out of options. Ben spread out another map. This one was more detailed. An old military map he had found in an abandoned jeep. "Here." He pointed to a spot in the distant mountains, Blackwood Military Research Station, a top-secret facility. They researched biological weapons and advanced technology. If there's any place that has answers to the Crimson Bloom, or at least weapons to fight it, it's there. How far is it? About 300 miles through the most dangerous lands, the areas marked red on this map, places where the spores are thickest. A dangerous journey, but the reward could be immense. Weapons, technology, perhaps even a safe haven. We'll prepare, I decided. We leave in 2 days. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. We repaired the truck, reinforced it with metal plates we found. We gathered all the food and water we could carry. Everyone worked with a new urgency. They were no longer frightened refugees. They were a team. I continued to practice my ability. Every hour I felt it get a little stronger. I was able to make a wooden chair slide across the floor. The headaches were diminishing. On the night before we left, Ilara came to me. She handed me a carefully mended leather jacket. "The tear on your arm," she said. "I fixed it." "Thanks," I said, taking the jacket. "Kale," she said, looking me straight in the eye. "These people, they will follow you anywhere. They believe in you." "I know." "Be careful," she said. "We need you." I just nodded. Words were not my strength. We left at dawn. The heavy truck rolled out of the farm. No one looked back. That farm had given us temporary shelter, but it was also a tomb. Now we were once again exposed to the world. The road ahead was desolate. We passed through ghost towns and silent villages. I sat in the cabin next to Ben, who was driving. My senses constantly scanned the surroundings. We managed to avoid a few small hordes. But on the 3rd day of our journey, I sensed something different. Not shriekers, humans. 5 blue-white flickers. They were hiding up ahead, in a narrow pass where large rocks flanked the road. A perfect ambush spot. "Stop," I told Ben. Ben hit the brakes. "What is it?" "Ambush. 5 men. Up ahead." The people in the back of the truck grew tense. "Are they survivors?" one of the men asked. "No survivors hide in an ambush spot with guns in their hands," I said. "They're raiders." I looked at the terrain. There was no way around. We had to go through. "Ilara, Ben, everyone stay in the truck. Don't get out no matter what happens. Lock the doors." I took my axe and my gun, opened the truck door, and stepped out. "Kale, what are you going to do?" Ilara asked through the cracked open window. "End this quickly," I said. I didn't walk on the road. I climbed the rocks on the right, moving fast and silent. From above, I could see them, 5 men armed with homemade weapons and a few old rifles. They were hiding behind the rocks, waiting for the truck to get into range. I could shoot them from here, but ammunition was precious, and I wanted information. I kept moving, circling around behind them. I moved like a ghost. Not a single pebble rolled under my feet. I got behind their position without being detected. The closest one was sitting with his back against a rock. He was idly looking down the road. I walked up behind him. My left hand covered his mouth. My right hand, holding a knife, made a clean cut across his throat, quick and clean. He slumped down without making a sound. 4 left. I moved to the next one. He was squatting, peeking through a gap between 2 rocks. I kicked the back of his knee. He buckled. I slammed the butt of my gun into the nape of his neck. He went unconscious. 3. One of them seemed to hear a noise. He turned. "Hey, Frank, is that you?" He saw me. His eyes widened in shock and fear. He was about to scream. I used my ability. A small, invisible pulse. It hit him in the chest, not strong enough to hurt him, but enough to knock the wind out of him and make him lose his balance for a second. In that second, I was in front of him. My axe came down. 2. The last 2 were close together. They heard the noise and turned at the same time. They saw me standing among their fallen comrades. They panicked, started shooting wildly. Bullets whizzed past me. They were too panicked to aim. I rushed towards them, a pulse. One of them staggered. Axe. He went down. The last one. He dropped his gun and raised his hands. Don't kill me, please." He was young, maybe just in his early 20s. His face was full of freckles and fear. I stopped. My axe was just inches from his neck. "Your gang, what's their name? How many?" "Where's your base?" "The Vultures," he stammered. "We have about 50 men. Our base is at the old cannery on the Serpent River. Please, I was just following orders." "Who's your leader?" "Razor. Everyone calls him Razor." I had enough information. I knocked him out with a blow to the temple. He would wake up in a few hours. I wasn't going to waste my time killing a coward. I collected their weapons and ammunition, then signaled for the truck. Ben drove through the ambush site. Everyone looked at the bodies with horror. I climbed back into the truck. "The Vultures," I told Ben. "Serpent River Cannery, we stay clear of that area." Ben nodded, his face grim. He marked the location on the map. The journey continued, but now we didn't just have to worry about the Shriekers. We had to worry about humans too. This world had no shortage of monsters. Some had rotting flesh and growled with hunger. Others looked just like you. We drove for another week. The landscape grew more desolate. The cities and towns gave way to endless stretches of cracked highways and dead forests. The air itself felt heavier here, thick with the invisible spores of the crimson bloom. I could feel it as a constant low hum in my senses, a background radiation of red. The truck was holding up thanks to Ben's constant maintenance. The people in the back were quiet, a tight-knit unit forged by shared trauma. They trusted me. They trusted Ben and Alara. We were their anchors in this chaotic world. My ability was growing stronger with each passing day. The headaches were gone, replaced by a slight fatigue after heavy use. I could now push a heavy barrel several feet without much effort. I practiced in secret whenever we stopped for the night, pushing rocks, bending thick branches, always testing my limits. It was becoming a part of me, as natural as breathing. As we neared the mountain range where Blackwood was located, the nature of the red lights changed. They were more numerous, more concentrated, and I began to sense new forms, large, lumbering shapes that glowed with a dull, steady red. They weren't as bright as brutes, but they were bigger. I called them behemoths. They seemed less aggressive, more like giant grazing animals, but I knew their size alone made them a threat. One afternoon, we had to stop. A massive behemoth was blocking the road. It was easily the size of a house, a grotesque mountain of flesh and mutated bone. It was slowly chewing on a tree, its massive jaws grinding the wood to pulp. "We can't go around it," Ben said, his voice tense. "The terrain on both sides is too rough." "We go through it," I said. "Kale, that thing is huge," Alara protested from the back. "It's slow," I countered, "and it's alone. I'll handle it, Ben. Be ready to drive through the moment I give the signal." I got out of the truck. The air was thick with the behemoth's foul stench. It hadn't noticed me yet. It was completely focused on its meal. I didn't want to use my gun. The sound would attract everything for miles. This had to be quiet. I approached it from the side. My axe felt like a toothpick against its massive scale. A direct assault was suicide. I had to use my new weapon. I focused, gathered my will. This would be the biggest test of my power yet. I extended both my hands towards its massive front leg. I didn't just push. I focused all my energy into a single sharp point, a lance of pure force. I felt a massive strain on my mind. A sharp pain shot through my temples, but I held on. The invisible lance hit the behemoth's knee joint. There was no sound, but the monster suddenly bellowed in pain. Its massive leg buckled. It stumbled, its immense weight making it lose balance. It crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact that shook the earth. It tried to get up, roaring in confusion and pain, but its leg was injured. It couldn't put weight on it. "Now, Ben!" I shouted. Ben gunned the engine. The truck sped past the fallen giant. I ran alongside it, then jumped onto the moving truck bed. The behemoth roared in frustration, but it couldn't follow us. We had made it. Everyone in the back was staring at me, their faces a mixture of fear and absolute reverence. I had toppled a giant without even touching it. How did you do that?" a young man named Leo asked, his voice trembling. "I pushed it," I said simply, leaning against the side of the truck, my head throbbing. The effort had taken a lot out of me. We finally reached the foothills of the mountains. A winding, narrow road led up towards the coordinates Ben had. The road was blocked by a military checkpoint, long abandoned. A faded sign read, "Blackwood Research Station, restricted, use of deadly force authorized." The gate was massive, made of reinforced steel, and it was closed. There was no way the truck could break through it. "Now what?" Ben asked. "We go on foot from here," I said. "The station should be about 5 miles up the road. We take only what we can carry. Essentials. We'll hide the truck and come back for it later." We spent an hour hiding the truck in a dense grove of trees, camouflaging it as best we could. Then, our small group of 17 started the long hike up the mountain. The air grew colder. The silence was absolute. My senses were on high alert. This place felt wrong. The red energy was here, but it was different. It was organized, not like a horde, but like a system. A network of faint red lines running through the ground, all leading towards the station. After 2 hours of walking, we saw it. The Blackwood Station wasn't a single building. It was a complex built into the side of the mountain, a sprawling facility of concrete and steel, now covered in vines and moss. It was dark, silent. "There's no power," Ben observed. "The backup generators must have failed years ago." "There are no shriekers," I said, which was even more unsettling. I couldn't feel a single active red light inside. The entire complex was a void, except for the faint, pulsing network of red lines in the ground. We found an entrance through a forced open ventilation shaft. One by one, we climbed down into the darkness. We used flashlights. The beams cut through the thick darkness, revealing long, sterile corridors. Papers were scattered everywhere, overturned equipment, signs of a hasty evacuation. "What happened here?" Ilara whispered. We found our answer in the main security office. A bank of monitors showed static, but one terminal was still working, running on a dying battery. Ben, with his engineering skills, managed to access the logs. The final entries were a frantic, terrified chronicle. The Crimson Bloom spore had first been studied here. They had engineered it, tried to weaponize it, but they had lost control. The logs described a new, advanced form of the infection, not shriekers, something they called the hive mind. According to the logs, the hive mind didn't create individual monsters. It assimilated biomass, it grew, it learned. It had taken over the entire facility, connecting every infected organism into a single, conscious entity. The red lines I sensed in the ground, they were its neural network. The station wasn't empty. The station was the monster. As Ben read the last log aloud, "It's in the walls! God help us! It's in the walls!" The floor beneath us began to tremble. A low, guttural hum filled the air. The faint red lines in the floor began to glow brighter. From the walls, the floor, the ceiling, a black, pulsating biomass began to ooze out. It was a living, breathing substance like tar mixed with muscle tissue. Tendrils of this substance shot out, lashing towards us. "Move!" I yelled. We ran. The corridors we had just walked through were now transforming. The black goo was covering everything. Tendrils shot out, trying to grab us. I used my power, blasting them away with pulses of force, clearing a path. We were herded. The hive mind wasn't just attacking randomly, it was guiding us, forcing us down a specific path, deeper into the facility. We burst into a massive cavernous chamber. It was the main research lab. In the center of the chamber was a colossal, pulsating mass of the black substance. A grotesque heart the size of a bus. Dozens of human bodies were suspended within it, their faces frozen in silent screams. They were being absorbed, used as fuel. This was the core of the hive mind. The entrance we came through was sealed by the black goo. We were trapped. It's beautiful," one of the men, Leo, whispered, his eyes wide with a strange fascination. His own blue-white light began to flicker, tinged with red. The hive mind was communicating with him, telepathically, promising an end to pain, promising unity. "Leo, snap out of it!" I yelled, but it was too late.